Joel Goldsmith in his book Parentheses in Eternity once said that in the presence of the God realized that the laws of the material world do not apply. So that if we're able to reach this place of God realization where we're in alignment with the source of our being, where I just call it thinking like God thinks, which is what Einstein's famous quote was. I don't care about the details. I just want to learn to think like God thinks. Like whatever the source of being, even if you're an atheist, there is a source of, there is an invisibleness from which all visible things originate. I mean, the greatest scientists on the planet will tell us that, and in the Tao it says very clearly that, that all being originates in non-being. So whatever that non-beingness is, the closer you get to how you think it acts and feels. And it's very interesting because when I wrote a book a few years back called The Power of Intention, it was that idea, that principal idea, that there is a way for us that intention isn't something that we do through the ego. Intention is a field of energy from which all things are intended. And if you can stay aligned with what that is like, then that's when the miracles take place. And I've done endless programs and lectures and so on, and contemplated this stuff in front of very large audiences and on tapes and so on. Right. And basically, what I feel is that as you elevate your consciousness, as you begin to remove the influences and the power and the draw of the ego, and begin to substitute your inner mantra shifts to how may I serve and what may I do for you, your false self less and more about just serving, then that's when the miracles, that's when healings take place. That's when abundance begins to show up. That's when, that's what they said even of Jesus. I mean, when he was God on earth. I mean, like Buddha, and in the presence of that kind of realization, even death itself couldn't survive. Even illness can't survive. That, wow. Like the story of Lazarus, in the Bible, because of that consciousness. That right. When you're in the presence of that consciousness, a death doesn't exist because there is no death. I've said so many times, and I just talked to a girl whose mother died last week, and she was just so upset about it. And I was saying, you haven't grasped the idea that she can't really die. She was in a little baby body. She was in a toddler's body. She was in a teenage body. She was in a 20 and a 30 and a 40-year-old body. She's been in hundreds, thousands, a new body every single day. And the body keeps changing and going right. through the process of decay and death, which we all go through, growth, decay, death. But who she is, her isness, whatever it is that keeps being in these other bodies, is no different now than it was when she was 12 and when she was 18 and so on. And that part can't die. And when you get that, when you really begin to realize that, that's when these kinds of miracles that I've spoken about so often in my life, when, the idea that when you put we call it a coincidence, but, when we have a thought and that thought is so aligned with spirit and it's not focused on what's in it for me, that the manifestation of that thought, the physical manifestation of that thought begins to take place. Thomas right. Troward talked about this in the early part of the 1900s. He said that when you begin to contemplate in the same way that God contemplates, then you gain the same powers that God has. The ability to create, the ability to manifest, the ability to heal, the ability to have things happen for you. That's what happens as you start contemplating your life, not from the perspective of how the ego does, like how much more can I get and I'm competing with others and so on. But you begin to contemplate in terms of how may I serve, how may I offer, how may I, be able to reach out. And as you do that, and I know I get so excited when I think about this topic, that even the least among you, as Jesus was saying, that I'm no different than you. He says somewhere in the New Testament, is it not written, like in the Old Testament, that I have said that it is said that you are gods, that we are all gods, that we are all pieces of God, we are all fragments of God. And as we think like that, the least among us, and I think what is referred to as the least, and remember, we're talking about interpretations here. Who knows what the right. least means? So that's just some translators, use of a phrase that was, that was uttered thousands and thousands of years ago. I would assume that to be what you said, that the feeble among us, those that will inherit the earth, becoming the observer to your life. It's like my teacher in India said that don't take your life so personally. beginning to become the observer to your life. And as you become the observer, you begin to notice that these miracles really do occur. That, the things that St. Francis was able to do, that, birds would come and just land on his shoulder. I've had butterflies come and just land and talk to me.